In Chapter 6 of In the One Spirit, Harrie Vernette Rhodes lets us see how she grew to trust her teachers and helpers and explains how often everyone gets a random thought or synchronicity that leads them to where they need to be. This is the second part of the chapter, which continues by sharing insights on psychic protections that everyone should be aware of because they apply equally well to the devious, self-serving beings, whether they are on our plane or in the spirit world, and how to tell real teachers from the darker entities. This chapter ends with a fascinating look at the varied teachers she interacted with, from many eras, even some which she knew while they were still alive. Each had a unique personality and helped her learn in different ways. She sees life as a continuity, some here, some there, where we are challenged continually so that we can learn how to be our best selves. And she continually tells this story in her usual down-to-earth way to help us understand how it all works. Chapter 6 continues. As my father pointed out to me, there are not only busybodies on the other side, there are mischievous spirits as well, and downright malicious ones. I have never been bothered by them, even in my earliest experimentation, but I have been told that my experience is rare. A psychically gifted individual can be badly misled unless they exercise caution when they are receiving information. The first protection is to develop a profound desire for good and only the good for everybody involved, the living and the spirits. From this mindset, each interaction can benefit everyone involved, both the helper and the helped. I cannot overstress how necessary it is to be dedicated to operating through love, to wanting to spread this loving energy to all mankind, and to be utterly free from thoughts of self-advancement. I am always striving for these goals, and yet never attaining, but I know perfectly well that I can only be used by wise teachers in proportion to my ability to get myself out of the spotlight. Basically, she is saying to remember that this is not about her. It has to be only about lovingly helping others in order for the healing current to come through her and also to avoid attracting the wrong sorts of entities. Even then, when I think that for one short hour there is no conscious self-seeking left in me, I still have to use my best judgment in evaluating the teaching or the leading that I receive. But then, doesn't this apply to all learning opportunities in our lives? Wisdom can be absorbed only as self-interest fades. Intuition becomes sharp and clear only as one's spiritual life deepens. It is not by accident that the saints of the Christian tradition and of other religions as well had extrasensory powers. This heightened awareness is the result of meditation. During meditation, we let go of self-interest to let in the dominance of the perfect being. Even the saints had to appraise their spiritual experience in the light of their best judgment. There never seems to be a condition in which mortal man is free to set aside his judgment, which is the organ of his responsibility. Oh, to be sure, there are times when the spiritual experience makes one completely oblivious of reasoning in hopes of quicker and clearer insights. But even a saint, when he returns to everyday life, has to apprise those moments of high insight and judge whether or not they are ultimately good. There is one more hard part of having transcendent experiences. We have to live up to the light that we receive, or before long, we just do not receive any more light. Wisdom and goodness may be throbbing around us, ours for the taking, but unless we take them in by making them manifest in our own lives, they will cease to offer themselves. Here is a state of affairs in which we cannot fool even ourselves. We cannot have a leading, nor wisdom, nor even love unless we put them right to work in our everyday actions. Refusal to act on our knowledge has more drastic results than even being cut off. Refusal to act throws a burden of guilt into the very center of our hearts and minds, where we live. Edgar Cayce, one of the greatest modern psychics and mystics, used to say over and over that knowledge not lived was sin. He was one who had looked into thousands of lives whom he counseled and had seen their motivation and the results of their mistakes. The prophet in him continually warned people that they had to live up to this wisdom as it came their way, or take the consequence in the form of physical illness, mental distress, and spiritual blockage. The best teachers on the other side know the problems we face while working with them. They know how hard it is for us to recognize that the simple fact of having died does not make a man a better person, nor does it make him fit to be a teacher. Without one having the requisite spiritual growth, the act of dying does not suddenly instill great insights into an undeveloped soul. Those who have achieved a kind of spiritual growth that gives them a larger consciousness, these spirits yearn intensely to give us help. They call our attention to our spiritual values constantly because these determine the quality of our existence beyond just one lifetime. Ultimately, they say we all have to reach the perfection implicit in our own natures. We can save ourselves an immense amount of suffering when we, as prodigals, decide to leave our assorted pigsties and start the return trip now. And what an exciting trip it is. There is someone out to lend us a hand all the way, even helpers and teachers from the plains beyond death. Although my teaching has come from a good many different teachers, I think I've never had contradictory explanations or instructions. Sometimes a teacher appears to clarify one point which was troubling me, or preemptively prepare me for an anxiety that would spring forth in the immediate future. For instance, on February 4th, 1917, one of the teachers made this point about my tendency to regret things from my past. Some people live entirely in the past. Some live only for the future. Instead, live each day as it passes, a blank slate to reach from one place to another. If you take an auto trip from Minneapolis to San Francisco, it makes no difference whether you are just out of Minneapolis or nearing San Francisco. You are on your way from here to there. You may grieve for the entire trip over what you left behind in Minneapolis, or spend time thinking about what you might find in San Francisco. Either way, you never notice anything in the here and now. Or you may live each day to its fullest, seeing all the beautiful scenes, interesting towns, amusing incidents, and inspiring people you meet along the way. When you arrive, you're filled with many treasurable memories of the trip and still lose nothing at the journey's end. This is one of the best explanations I have seen for what is now called mindfulness, that the treasures of life come from how you use your attention. You can do the typical left brain focus on a story of what was or what could be, or you can use your whole brain to actually be aware of what is available to you to experience right now. This is the place of joy, of wholeness, where you are part of something much more, of wholeness so that you can connect with something more. It just feels differently and melts away anxieties and fears. Harrie continues, I cannot remember when Ashur, the helper, first appeared to me, but he always comes with a feeling of power and authority. Sometimes I see him vividly. He has a strong, dark face with aquiline features, very keen dark eyes, wearing a flowing white robe. Sometimes I catch only a glimpse of his robe, but his presence is as unmistakable as his voice. He has his own way of speaking, and he never discusses trivialities nor immediate practicalities. Usually he gives sensible, long-run religious instructions. Aaron has also been an unfailing guide. Perhaps he is my favorite teacher. I see him wearing a rich striped robe usually. He has a flowing beard and keen, direct eyes. Another teacher always announces himself with a blue rose. I see the rose first, and indeed, sometimes I only see the rose, and then hear his admonitions, which are succinct and direct. He was an ancient astrologer. The Brown Friar is dear to me. I first saw him in 1923 when I was in Los Angeles. Early one morning, I saw him standing by the piano in our house. I took him to be a living person because we never locked our doors so that patients and friends could come and go as they wished. There was something kindly, even jolly about this tonsured monk, dressed in a long brown cassock tied with a cord. As I stepped toward him, I realized that he came from the spirit realm. Although I had never met him before, I felt as if he were an old friend. He told me that he had the music for a poem that I was very fond of. This was a poem about the Torrey pine. In California, I'd been captivated by these twisted, sturdy pines, which stand along the seashore and brave even the stiffest gales. I want to interrupt here with a story of my own. As I was searching for an image of a Torrey pine just now, I recognized it. Long ago, I visited a friend who lived in California on the coast near Santa Cruz, and I was fascinated by the same type of tree. As you can see, it's not the prettiest tree, but I found some seeds on the ground and managed to grow it and finally plant it in my yard. So back to the story. We left off with the Brown Friar wanting to set her Torrey pine poem to music. I told the monk I didn't think I could take down music, even if he could get it into my head. Oh, yes, you can. I will dictate it, and you write the notes. Get your paper. So I brought out the paper lined with his staff, and he began to dictate. The setting he gave me is fairly intricate and harmonically correct. Music critics who have seen it have been delighted with it. When we had finished our task, I played the work, and the monk was much pleased. So was I. After that, the brown monk used to often stand beside me as I played for church. Several others besides myself have seen him. In fact, he is one of the most plainly visible, the most human of all the teachers that I know. Under the date of November 26, 1923, I find these notes. A teacher from the other side has come to me twice lately. He calls himself a magician. He wears a blue and white striped robe and a turban and carries a crystal ball. Friday night, he came while I was treating Mrs. Fahlstrom. He introduced himself and asked me to rub my hands together. As I did so, they grew fiery hot, and then came a wonderful perfume like roses with incense and spices. Both Mrs. Fahlstrom and I smelled it strongly. I went into the other room and held out my hand to a girl who was sitting there, and she exclaimed, "How lovely! Has someone brought you perfume or flowers?" She knows nothing of psychic manifestation and presumed it was a material perfume. I have not been able to get that perfume again, although my hands do become very hot at times. In my notebook, I wrote, "These manifestations are so varied and remarkable that they have given me an entirely new understanding of life in its fullness. I've learned to realize that all happenings of daily life are important because of the training they give me, until I have gained proper perspective of things, so that nothing has power to make me miserable just because it is unpleasant." Wow, that's another awesome insight. She points out that we have a choice of how we react to the events in our lives. Unpleasant things can and do happen frequently. We can let these things defeat us, make us feel a victim, or provide an excuse to give in to the misery. Or we can recognize that we can choose how to use this moment. Is there a lesson here that will help me make a change that I don't really want to make? Will an opportunity arise if I let go of a paradigm that does not serve me? Can I see the event as I did back when we talked of mindfulness, with the whole brain, big picture sort of way, so that I can find or channel the strength or embrace the change? So Harrie continues. Another entry recalls Zeke. Good old Zeke has often saved a situation by his fun. He just appears when I'm under tension and saves the day for common sense. One evening, when we were sitting in the silence and trying to receive an important message, we were interrupted several times and lost the vibrations completely. Of course, exasperation or anger are just the wrong emotions to promote helpful vibrations. Zeke must have wanted to shock us into laughter and hence back to a relaxed attitude, because he dictated an amusing jingle of several verses. Zeke could not properly be called a teacher, and I am sure he would be the first to say so. A far different sort, and a great teacher indeed, is Omra. I doubt if I have ever perceived a teacher from a higher plane of life than where he resides. Usually his messages have come to me through Dr. Walton. Omra was her teacher, but on rare occasions he has given instructions directly to me. He calls himself Son of All Light. On December 4th, 1915, he gave me some paragraphs on the love that develops from bearing one another's burdens. I wish I had more of Omra's teachings written down. He is one who understands the compelling literalness of the fact that we cannot ignore the needs of others and that we must never intentionally frustrate, hamper, or devastate others. To know Omra is to be unable to have an enemy. He vibrates with love and sees through all masks of evil intent to the longing in each human heart. In some way, we human beings are knit to one another, perhaps through the substratum of the subconscious minds, by whatever name they be called, whether the racial unconscious, or the deep mind, or the hinterland of common memory. There is some fathomless awareness of each other, which we all hold in common. It isn't so much that I am my brother's keeper, as that I am my brother, in inescapable fashion. When he fails, I fail too. When I am lifted up, he is lifted up. Omra would never say that it would be a fine thing for the world if we would please love one another. Rather, we must love one another. It is a law, outside of which there is no happiness for anyone. The sooner we get busy and operate within this law, the deeper our own personal joy, as well as the stronger our interpersonal understanding. No teacher from the other side has given me more help than Professor Charles. Of all my teachers, he is to me the most valued and the most beloved. Indeed, I don't think of him as one of the teachers. For me, there are teachers and helpers, and then there is Professor Charles. I knew him a decade before he died. I first met him in 1911 when he was living in Minneapolis. He was tall, keen of countenance, gentle of movement, a Quaker with a wise and loving nature. He usually wore a light gray suit. By profession, he was a naturalist, a herbalist. And when we met, we stood looking at each other with almost nothing to say, and yet with everything to share. It was as if everything had already been communicated. From then on, life assumed a changed aspect. He was the other half of my nature. Both of us realized this complete, steadying, unverbalized kinship. We never talked alone, only once. I had a full, busy life, and so did he. I think we both realized that it was our fate for this lifetime to live out our separate responsibilities. I almost always knew clairvoyantly where he was and what in general was occupying his time. Occasionally, we exchanged notes on some matter. Always our thoughts moved along the same channels, and new light seemed to come to both of us, both at the same time, about the same sort of experience. Thoughts are living things, and their swift wings fly to carry courage and strength from one to the other. Life becomes vibrant with joy. Such an experience was new to me. It opened the shell of earthly existence, freeing me from the material bondage and giving a new conception to life and to love. My inner eyes were open to behold beauties in nature before unseen. Heavenly music came to my listening ear, and joy like an angel's garment enfolded me. Then one evening of November 7th, 1922, I suddenly saw him in the finer body, which seemed composed of radiance. He had died. His first message to me was, "This change means that you must do greater work, for now we shall work together." One who has not passed through a similar loss cannot realize the sorrow which persists through any amount of reassurance. Tears failed, and as my spirit quieted, I realized the sustaining blessing of his constant presence with me. The day the professor died was also the birth of a new friendship with a woman to whom I have owed my life over and over again, Maybelle Fahlstrom. We had met previously, for she had come with a little patient to my home, and I had remembered her. She was a very pretty young woman with a joyous and animated expression, and her face has grown more illumined with the years. Maybelle had a genuine psychic gift, but she used it only for amusing herself and her friends, telling fortunes at some benefit party, entertaining her pleasure-loving acquaintances at luncheons. On this day, when the professor died, she was sitting in the waiting room of a doctor's office. She felt someone step across her feet, and she spoke out loud involuntarily. Someone has just died and has stepped past me, someone who matters a lot. From then on, she has known the professor, and she and I have been the closest of friends. Through me, she became interested in spiritual concerns and realized that she too had a gift for healing. For some years now, she has devoted all of her time to helping people. Her clairvoyance is amazing, but not more so than her ability to bring physical and spiritual restoration to those who want such help. I have treated her and the members of her family. She has done the same for me and mine. She has saved my life during serious illness, usually assisted by advice from the professor. One of the interesting facets of our relationship is recognizing the same teacher at the same time, or seeing the same vision simultaneously. We can hear the same words being said and even report the same conversation. It would be impossible to mention the professor without including Maybelle. With the two of them on their different planes are my daily companions. So long as we have a native craving to seek for meaning in our days, we shall probably need to have teachers. No doubt enough has been written in our Bible and other sacred books to give us sufficient light to walk by, but sometimes we miss the meaning of the words just because they are too familiar. And so someone has to tell us the same thing. In other words, I'm sure, however, that if I were not able to hear the teachers' voices and take down their messages, then the truth would be brought to me in other ways, as indeed it is continually brought through friends and books, for none of us is left without a guide. When the pupil is ready, the teacher appears. This is the end of chapter 6.